Welcome to Sweet Valley Diaries. It's just like Friday Night Lights, except ridiculous. Book number 60, That Fatal Night.
Will Ken's life be ruined in one tragic moment?
So does that make me?
Is that good?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Well, hello, gladiators, and welcome to this, the full episode, season finale of season 6.
I didn't realize this was a season finale.
Yeah, well, surprise, surprise. Well, do you recognize that voice, gladiators? Probably not, but there's always a chance. I'm Marissa Flaxbart. Did I say that?
Nope.
Well, I'm the host of the show. My name is Marissa Flaxbart. You should get that down because I'm going to be here every time. I am joined by William Joseph Stribling.
Yeah, that's it.
Will, you were on the show once before. Do you have any recollection of that happening?
I do, because it was me and Sinead Prasad doing the episode together, and it was years ago. It must have been.
Yeah, well, now we're getting close. Like, this December will be 4 years that we've been doing Sweet Valley
I think it was
Diaries.
an early one. I think it was in the first dozen, maybe?
Oh, yeah, it was book 11.
Okay, wow.
It was called Too Good to Be True. And Too Good to Be True is the story of a visitor to Sweet Valley named Suzanne Devlin. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, the name Devlin definitely rings some bells. And was there something with her flirting with a teacher? Is that okay?
Yeah, there was something with that.
That's what I remember.
And she tried to ruin his career by making up a story. It was a very problematic book.
This one is also a little problematic, and it makes me wonder, are they all like this, or am I just lucky?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. The fact that every Sweet Valley High book is a little problematic is kind of like the thesis statement of the whole podcast. Mm-hmm. You know, why is it interesting? Mm-hmm. We're here to talk about That Fatal Night.
A bad title.
Yeah.
Do you think they meant That Fateful Night?
You know, when I put this in my calendar, it's like at the beginning of the season, I'll like structure out, this is where every episode will fall if I start on this date when I'm deciding when to start a season. And I noticed the other day that I had put That Fateful Night in the calendar because my brain was like correcting. It couldn't possibly be fatal.
But no one dies, so it's not a fatal night.
Yes, no one dies. Our guest in the last book's episode, Libby Hawker, did spoil that for everybody. So gladiators, I didn't issue a spoiler alert because it was pre-spoiled. So...
Does anyone ever die in these books?
Oh, yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Right. Once I noticed that the book was called That Fatal Night, which honestly, the whole fateful thing was like a low-level realization. Like, it was not rising to consciousness that I'd been making that confusion. But I was like, oh no, who's going to die? But then you read the back of the book and it's like, it seems like some serious stuff is going to happen, but I don't know who might die. I mean, we can talk about the cover of the book because...
The cover is so silly.
Okay, if you hadn't read the book and you hadn't read the back of the book, what would you think is happening on the cover?
I would think that the blonde boy did something bad and he's looking off into the distance with guilt, and his girlfriend, who is kind of like clawing at his clavicle, is concerned, and she doesn't know the secret thing that he has done, that he is responsible for. He also looks like Brian Wilson from the early Beach Boys days.
I was trying to think of what he looked like.
A little like one of the Wilson brothers. Yeah.
He has a lot of hair.
Yes.
But it's short. But it's just like...
But it's also long.
It's short but long.
Yeah.
This fellow is such a hunk. Ken Matthews. Does
he exist before this book?
Yes.
Okay.
Ken Matthews has been a favorite background character of these books since the beginning. He hasn't gotten a book of his own for a really long time.
So this is a big deal for Ken.
That he gets his own book, yeah, it's a big deal.
That this all happens to him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, basically, Ken's short, one-sentence biography, it's included in this book. He's the star of the football team. Mm-hmm. He's, got those handsome, I think the phrase all-American probably gets used because these books love that phrase. But he's the football star. He's well-liked. He's popular. He's not all that bright, but, he can hold a conversation. Mm-hmm. And he's mostly famous for being the captain of the football team, the quarterback.
Now, would you consider this book like a side plot, or it doesn't really focus on the twins. And I know they're the stars of the show, basically.
Right. So this is one of these books of which the kind of like parade of randos is what we call it here on Sweet Valley Diaries. Ken Matthews is not a rando, but the woman on the cover.
Terry?
Her name is Terry. Terry Adams? Terry...
Polo?
It's not Terry Polo.
I'm going to find it.
Okay.
It is. I mean, she doesn't even show up right away. Come on,
Does
Terry.
it say on the back?
Just Terry.
Oh, okay, well, no wonder I can't remember what her last name is. The book doesn't care. And Terry, like, kind of appeared at the end of the previous book, but she's new. She's the rando. She is one of many randos that this book brings up.
She's so random that she's not even the main statistician for the football team. She's the assistant statistician.
That's her job. She's a junior. She is a junior.
Terry Adams, by the way. You got
Yay!
it. Yeah.
Yes, got it. Okay, so yes, she is the statistician. She's a junior at the high school, which most of the characters in these books are. But we've never heard of her before.
They're all perpetually juniors. Do you see people graduate ever?
Not in Sweet Valley High.
Okay.
There are other series. Sweet Valley Senior Year.
Got it.
Sweet Valley University. But even those, like, they were written in different eras, so it's sort of confusing. Like,
when was this book written?
that's actually an important question because this book was published in November of 1989, which is pretty momentous because that means...
I wasn't born yet.
That's right. Not what I was going to say, but thanks for reminding me of that. I'm sure me and all the listeners that are older than me will be thrilled to hear that. No, the reason is that it's about to be the 90s. Like, when we return for season 7 of Sweet Valley Diaries, it's going to be the 90s.
And does that get reflected in the books that follow this one?
I don't know, because I haven't read those books.
You've never read them?
I've never read them.
Oh, I thought that you read all of these as a young person.
There's so many of them.
Yeah. 180, Wikipedia says.
Yeah. So I read 50 of them before I started the podcast. That's a lot of books,
That's
right?
a lot of books.
I thought it was a lot.
Yeah.
But, and I read the Sweet Valley Twins books, which are like younger books. But yeah, so it's November 1989. And there is actually something at the back of the hard copy of the book that I thought was so precious. It says, Sweet Valley wants to know, what's your New Year's resolution? Announcing the Sweet Valley New Year's Resolution Contest. How are you planning to start the 1990s? Sweet Valley wants to know. And entering our contest is so easy. Just send us a short description of your New Year's resolution, 50 words or less.
It does not take 50 words to say that you just want to kiss a boy at midnight.
My New Year's resolution. Yeah, so it's like a 90s resolution, too. So anyway, isn't that cute?
That is extremely cute.
You were asking me about the structure of the books. This is one of those, it's kind of like the structure of these Parade of Randos books that are not about the twins in any real way, in that it starts reminding the reader, these books are mostly about the Wakefield twins, because the very first thing that happens is that we have, Elizabeth and Todd doing their thing and Jessica and her perspective on things before we get into the fact that the book is going to be about Ken Matthews. And they're at a football game because the Gladiators.
That was my high school mascot as well. I did not go to any football games, but I knew that we were the Gladiators.
Did you guys have football? Because you went to like an art school.
Yeah, but it was an arts magnet within a big public school.
Oh, okay.
So the public school, big football school, Gibbs High School, the Gibbs Gladiators.
Oh, well, that makes a lot more sense than the Sweet Valley High Gladiators.
What makes the valley sweet is what I want to know.
Oh.
I understand what makes a valley hidden, but not what makes a valley sweet.
Well, we actually recently had a sort of conspiracy theory that maybe Sweet Valley had once been Hidden Valley, but like some terrible curse had struck it and it had become sweet. Like
an overgrowth of strawberry plants, and now it's a sweet valley.
Yuck. So I'm just thinking about the ranch dressing and the strawberries, and it's
You don't dip your strawberries in ranch?
I haven't tried it yet, so maybe I shouldn't
You're missing
knock
out.
it
It's
yet.
savory and sweet. I don't even know what ranch flavor is.
It's like buttermilk and pepper.
Okay.
Right?
That's a lot simpler than I would have thought.
Well, I don't know. I'm just
That's what it looks
spitballing.
like.
So the first chapter of this book, my head was spinning because it reads like a yearbook. Like whoever was the ghostwriter for this book was like, we got to get as many teen full names as we possibly can. We've got A who's who of Sweet Valley sports, I wrote in my notes.
And then there's a party that immediately follows. So there's two big opportunities to meet way too many characters for me to understand what the hell's going on at any point. Like, where is this going? Whose story is this? The point of view is constantly shifting.
Yeah.
There's so many people with so much skin in this game.
Right. Well, and the point of view shift is wielded really creatively in this book at a few points, but we'll get there. So I'm going to read this. This is my thing that I noted as a who's who of Sweet Valley sports. Down in the first row of bleachers, Sweet Valley High's basketball star Shelley Novak exchanged high fives with her friend Kristen Thompson, who was well on her way to a professional tennis career. John Pfeiffer, the sports photographer for the Oracle, was standing on his seat, snapping pictures of the celebration. His girlfriend, Jennifer Mitchell, was standing beside him. Sitting quietly in the middle of all the commotion, next to Shelley, was Terry Adams, a petite, pretty junior who was the Gladiator's assistant statistician. Her eyes closed, she hugged her clipboard tightly, a dreamy smile on her lips. That last run of Ken's was his 57th of the season. This book holds up the 57th run as if it's like a special number.
Yeah. I don't know nearly enough about football to know if that is an impressive thing for high school, college, professional.
We don't know how
football.
long their season is, you know? Terry always had all the facts right at hand, especially when they concerned Ken Matthews. So Terry Adams has a big crush on Ken Matthews. Terry Adams knows everything about the Gladiators football stats. And she's like interested. Like it's not just that she loves Ken and so she loves football because she loves Ken, much to the book's credit. Don't you think? She seems like
she takes her job seriously.
Right. Well, her job as the
assistant statistician.
I mean, she's a student at the school,
Yes.
so it's like, I'm sure it's like a volunteer thing. It's like being a water boy.
Or like writing for the school paper, or the other kid, John Pfeiffer, who's a photographer, who's somehow standing on his seat. Why wasn't he down on the sidelines? Why did he have to sit in a seat?
That's a really good point. I mean, this whole book, the way that football is described in this chapter also struck me as both confusing and vague. And I was thinking about the fact that these books were published like all across the world, but especially in the English-speaking world. And there are other countries that have football, like American football. I know there were a lot of Canadian readers, but like, I don't know, what is Australian football?
No, they're
like?
more into rugby, right?
Yeah, but there is something called Australian football.
It's probably soccer.
Well, then there's soccer, which of course the British call football.
Yeah, which most of the rest of the world calls football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely dumbed down enough that I understood it as someone who doesn't really get football.
It's a complicated sport.
Yeah.
I mean, for a sport that's just like run it down from one end to the other.
There's a lot of
the little
chaos
bits
and
bobs,
the nuances of the chaos.
How many chances do you have to go how far? And if you get that far, then you get to go a little further. And then you can score 7 points, or you can score 2 points, or you can score 1 point.
Well, you score 6 and then...
Oh, 6 plus 1.
Plus 1. Or plus 2.
We should have a football podcast where we explain how football works to the world.
Try to figure out football.
But like, this is the level of understanding that the book conveys as well, for sure. So another character that gets mentioned early on is a fellow named Scott Trost. So as long as we're talking about characters in the world of Sweet Valley, let's just real quick do a little bit of talking about boys.
Yes.
Who's a beautiful boy, who's a beautiful boys. I'm in danger of losing my head.
Okay, so Scott Trost, I kind of think he's come up in the books before, but I'm not totally sure.
How did he come up in this one? I don't remember him.
Well, first of all, he's on the football team.
Okay. Oh, is he the one that replaces Ken as the quarterback?
He's going to replace Ken as the quarterback once events of this book unfold.
Yeah, I'm bad with names.
Well, that's a problem in a book like this, because there's about 1,000 characters.
Yeah, but they also just constantly call each other by their full names.
By their full names,
or by their last name, so that's helpful.
Later on in the book, they're like, Ken, it's me, Aaron Dallas. I'm here, Lila Fowler. No, she doesn't say that, but Gladiators, if you don't know what this book is about, it'll all become clear when we get there. But start imagining why you think people might be introducing themselves to Ken by their first and last name. You were saying, like, you're not good with names, and I was noticing how many names were being introduced. I was just thinking about how many characters already exist in Sweet Valley and how ridiculous it is that like still more characters are being introduced. Like this book almost feels like a big push into like a new era of Sweet Valley where there are going to be more characters to have stories. But like there are plenty of characters to have stories about already.
Did Egbert exist already?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because
He's
when
an
he
OG.
casually calls this guy Egbert in his car, it seemed like a quip, like
When
an
Ken does?
insult. Yeah. And I'm like, is that like a weird insult from the 80s I'm not aware of? Like,
That's literally his last
and then it came up later. Oh, okay. His name is Egbert, and that made me sad for him.
So here's an intro to Scott Trost.
Seems all right. I feel like he gets painted as a villain later because he is the replacement of Ken. We're definitely supposed to be Team Ken, not Team Scott. We're supposed to, right?
for
Like
sure.
empathize with.
Absolutely.
So I feel bad for Scott.
Yeah, I mean,
He's just a pawn.
the Wakefield twins feel bad for Scott too in a funny scene, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Just a quick intro of Scott Trost. Elizabeth clutched Todd's hand as Ken dropped back to pass. Complete, she cried happily as Scott Trost caught the ball and scooted out of bounds, stopping the clock with 40 seconds left. So Scott's a good football guy. Elizabeth and Todd are having a great time at the game. That was a little taste of the football in this book. There's another boy who gets introduced. His name is Zack Johnson. I wrote in my notes with a question mark. Terry. She turned and saw Zack Johnson trotting over to her. I got Trost and trot. Those are similar words. Is that something? Is that something? I don't know. Okay. She turned and saw Zack Johnson trotting over to her, his uniform still clean. Zack was a sophomore linebacker, and a good one too. But on a team like the Gladiators, with so many talented upperclassmen, Zack spent most of his time on the bench. So Zack is inviting Terry to a party at Amy Sutton's house. So Amy Sutton is on the cheerleaders. She is really gunning for Ken, and she has this whole big elaborate fantasy about how she's going to be Ken's girlfriend. But this is the first we've ever heard of Zack Johnson, I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, Terry doesn't really want to go to the party because she's, like, nervous to even be around Ken.
Has
right?
Terry existed before this book?
Only to set up this book briefly in the last book.
Okay.
But wouldn't you say, like, she's so in love with
Terry?
Ken? Like, she has such a big crush on Ken that she's, like, nervous to go to the party.
Yes. Yes, which is weird and also totally authentic to teenage, anxiety. Yeah,
Totally. It's a thing that it seems actually fairly warranted. She's got this feeling about Ken, like, he doesn't really know I exist. My dream of falling in love with him or him falling in love with me is only that, and I know that it's just a fantasy, so why torture myself? Plus, the party's at Amy's house, and everybody knows that Amy's, like, kind of gunning for Ken. And if they didn't know...
And Amy's been around the block. Amy has dated everyone, apparently. And is that accurate with the previous books? Amy's just always got a new boyfriend?
Yes, and Amy has this interesting quality where, like, at the end of the last book, Jessica was thinking that she was worried that Amy would kind of just want to toy around with Ken, and Ken was looking for something serious. But when Amy thinks about Ken in this book, she's thinking about, actually marked a particular passage. This is much later, but this is a glimpse into how she's thinking about Ken. The two of them had so much to look forward to. There were the rest of the football games. She would be out front cheering for him as he carried the team to victory after victory. And then there was college. Ken would probably go to a big university on a football scholarship, and she could go to the same school. Maybe Ken would even end up playing professional football one day. Amy wouldn't mind that one bit. She's basically, like, married to Ken in her daydream, and she's got their whole lives planned out. But this is what Amy does. She, like, falls madly in love with a boy for, like, 5 seconds. But do you remember how she is at her party?
Yes, I do. I mean, she's kind of really swinging for the fences with this public Ken relationship.
Yeah, he walks into the party and she's like, it's the man of the hour.
Just, like, makes out with him publicly in front of everyone.
Yeah, they are not even dating. She just plants a kiss full on his lips.
And then, like, paragraphs go by, and then it says... And then she breaks away from the kiss. And I'm like, whoa. They were kissing this whole time?
Yeah, like, was it just, like, lips against lips? like no movement for, like, 20 seconds?
And everyone's just staring at this?
Yeah.
Poor Terry.
Poor Terry is right. And, also poor Ken, because he's like, what? And he hears at the party this rumor that Amy is basically saying that they're an item. She's, like, the secreting it, right? She's like willing it into an existence.
She's definitely manifesting this relationship.
Yeah, which could probably work in a high school relationship.
Yeah.
Especially with someone as manipulating as Amy and as like sort of malleable as Ken. But I know we kind of stopped talking about boys, but there is another boy at the party that's worth talking about.
Is it Skip?
Yeah, it's almost like, why does he even exist in this book? But there's this guy named Skip Harmon. Here's a funny moment, I thought. Skip is Jessica's date to the dance, or to the dance. An easy mistake to make. To Amy's party.
They're dancing at this party.
They are dancing. Let's see. I have so many notes.
I wrote notes at the beginning, like, okay, Elizabeth Wakefield dating Todd Wilkins, and then quickly went, this is not worth my time writing this down. These things are not nearly as important as I thought they were going to be.
Well, they are important, but not to this book. The whole last book was all about Elizabeth dating Todd, so Ken, Todd, and Liz, they're just standing around, and Jessica comes up to them. She's been dancing with Skip Harmon. Hi, Liz. Hi, Todd. Great party, huh? She asked. Sure is, Elizabeth agreed. Skip is a terrific dancer. You two look fabulous out there. Dancing isn't everything, Jessica said, rolling her eyes toward the ceiling. In answer to Elizabeth's quizzical look, she added, I'll tell you later.
Does she ever tell her later? I don't think she does.
She does tell her later, but only after, like, Skip has gotten worse. So whatever it is that he's done up to that point.
Got it.
I wonder if I made a note about Skip 33. I put 33 exclamation point here. So they're still at the party on page 33 of this book. It's a long party. We get a description of him too. Every time he passed a mirror, he would whip out a comb, slick back his dark hair, and then smile at his reflection as if he were looking into a movie camera. To be this good looking and this talented, Skip sighed. Well, what can I say? I've been very fortunate.
He goes on a whole rant about his good fortune and his luck being talented, handsome, how it wasn't his choice, nothing he earned. Such a strange fella, this Skip.
And when he asked her to dance again and she says no because she's tired, he says, can't keep up with me, huh? Skip teased her. What's the matter? Are you out of shape or something? No, but I am out of patience, Jessica replied. She's not into it. So That's funny. But there's nothing really comes of that. There's
no payoff to Skip in this book.
I would call it a B story, but that's all. That's the whole story.
Skip sucks is all. Yeah.
So Winston is there with his girlfriend Maria, and they need to go home, but they're going to have to take the bus. Oh my God.
No one takes the bus in Sweet Valley.
No. And it's because Winston's car is in the shop or something.
His VW needs new tires this time.
That's right. Good memory. You're kind of a car guy.
No, I don't understand how they work, but I understand.
Do have one.
Occasionally they need new tires.
So Ken wants to get away from the party. Seems like he's maybe a little bit more introverted than people expect him to be, but also he's weirded out by the Amy thing. He offers to drive Winston and Maria home, kind of insists.
He's
basically
looking to get out of this party.
Yeah, and he says he'll come back. He's just going to drop him off and he'll be right back. And it'll be nice to kind of get away for a minute. Terry is so feeling like shit about the whole Amy Ken thing. She just feels really devastated. Because how could she compete with Amy Sutton for Ken Matthews? It does they're a perfect, obvious pairing,
Right.
So Winston offers somehow she ends up in this car too.
I thought it was pretty well done the way she ended up in the car. She's crying in the bathroom and talking to Elizabeth probably. Meanwhile, Maria and Winston are arranging their ride with Ken, and
you're doing so good.
Thank you very much. Just so many names.
Well, the Elizabeth thing is actually another facet to this particular kind of framework that some of these randos books have. It's how are we going to get the twins involved? Jessica doesn't really have anything to do. Maybe she'll spread a rumor or be a way to get information around, which she is in this book. And then Elizabeth needs a job, and Elizabeth's job is always the same. It's to be the person that's going to fix everything through a phone call that happens.
Got it.
And also through a scene like this, usually where she's
a good friend.
Yeah, so she kind of knows Terry. Terry's been doing some stuff for the newspaper lately, I guess, and has recently made friends with Elizabeth. We didn't see any of that happen, but the book tells us, so we take it for granted. And then Elizabeth, you know, is stepping in and like helping out, or is the person that the rando character like thinks to call for advice. It has happened many times at this point in these books. And
I'd call her. She sounds like she knows everyone and everything. Is comfortable talking to other people's parents.
And also, like, understands the true subtext of everybody's emotions. I mean, she's not always like that, but in this book, when Terry eventually calls her and is, like, explaining what's happening with Ken and her interpretation of the story, Elizabeth is like, well, but maybe Ken feels this other way. And what she says is totally true. Anyway, we're being vague, but we're going to get there. So this is actually a really important moment because after Ken drops off Winston and Maria, he goes to drop off Terry, and it's raining. It's raining so hard. Oh my gosh, I can hardly see in front of me. And Terry's like, come inside, right? Doesn't she say come inside and wait out the rainstorm?
She does.
She's so awkward, but like they start talking about football and it's okay.
I thought it was going to lead in a romantic direction.
Yeah.
I honestly, to be fair, at the party, there's a scene where this is me trying to figure out where this story's going and what's happening. I didn't trust Amy for 1 second. So there's a scene where Amy offers to get Ken a drink. And I was like, she's going to roofie him. Like, there's something going on here.
But what does she do?
She gets him juice? Is that?
Orange juice. She actually doesn't even... She says, he comes into the party. She says, hey, Ken, can I get you a drink? And he's like, sure. And she says, orange juice, right? As if, like, she knows that's his order. And I was just like, I cannot believe that the juniors of Sweet Valley High are having a post-football game party at Amy Sutton's house. No parents. And she's going to serve him orange juice.
Well,
I mean, I love it.
He's depleted of his vitamin C after the game. He needs to...
This is just not what you think of as a stereotypical, like, 80s high school
But
party.
the way that she exits the scene and we don't go with her, and then she comes back and she's just being so manipulative, I was like, she's up to no good. And then he's driving on the dangerous wet road. And I'm like, oh, the roofie's going to kick in.
He's going to be drugged. Oh, wow.
Well, the cover of the book, the teaser makes it seem like, well, what does it say?
Will Ken's life be ruined in one tragic moment?
Yeah, in one tragic moment. And I guess it is tragic because it's totally random and it is not a cosmic or karmic punishment for anything. It's truly bad luck. But I thought it was going to be a cautionary tale of sorts where it's like, oh, mess with the wrong people and, you know, this is what's going to happen. But no, it was just bad luck. She didn't do anything malicious. She's just really overplaying her hand trying to get this boy to date her. So fast forward back to the car. It's dark. It's wet. It's very rainy and dangerous slick roads, I suppose. And Ken gets in a car accident with a tree. Avoids a drunk driver? Yeah,
there's a drunk driver whose fault it really is. Ken is driving really slow, and there's somebody with like headlights careening really fast, like right toward him. And so he swerves to avoid the drunk driver and hits a tree.
Yeah, and they're pretty delicate with how they deal with the drunk driver. I thought it wasn't totally written off, and it wasn't over the line, like he wasn't belligerently drunk, like he was very sad. Yeah. There's a mention of a breathalyzer. He gets led to a cop car, but it's not too explicit. You're definitely left to fill in the blanks a little bit.
Yeah.
And then later the kids are all like, some drunk driver ran him off the road and he hit a tree.
Yeah. The drunk driver is like crying. Yeah. He's like a middle-aged man. He's like, oh, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah.
But we see all of that stuff through Elizabeth and Todd and Jessica's eyes because they are driving home together. Jessica is like excited to get away from Skip Harmon.
Yeah.
And a moment happened that is tragic and heartbreaking, but also seemed like a real like potential kind of merch opportunity for Sweet Valley Diaries. Okay. So here's what happens. They're driving in, they see an accident, right? They see the side of this accident. It looks like a bad one. There's an ambulance, Todd said, pointing. The ambulance was pulled over next to a crumpled white car. Todd, isn't that a white Toyota? Like Ken's? Elizabeth asked. Sorry.
Leave it. Leave it. Leave it.
I'll leave it. Todd stopped the car and stared at the wreckage. The front end of the white car was crumpled like an accordion. The windshield had a gaping hole in it, and there was shattered glass everywhere. "It's a Toyota, all right," Todd said. Elizabeth strained to see the back of the Toyota as they slowly passed by. Ken had 2 bumper stickers in his car. That's wrong. Ken had 2 bumper stickers on his car. One simply had the name of the school on it, and another said, "Honk if you love the Gladiators." She tried to focus on the relatively unharmed bumper, but it was difficult with all the flashing lights. She was able to make out the words, "Love the Gladiators."
Dun dun dun.
She felt her heart leap in her chest. So what do you think would be the better bumper sticker branding opportunity for the podcast? Is it honk if you love the Gladiators or just love the Gladiators?
I like the idea of the merch somehow representing the moment from the story where it's like half torn away.
It's so morbid.
But he survives. It's not a fatal night.
It's not a fatal night.
It's a fateful night.
See, this is where celebrating the fact that Ken Matthews is alive. He's alive.
But is it a life worth living? Which is the I guess thing that we explore.
That's really the takeaway for the rest of the book. Is his life going to be worth living or not? Okay, we're back in a new location. Does it sound different?
Sound real different.
Oh my gosh, it's like the ceiling got lower or something. So weird.
We've been displaced.
Yes, but displaced to a place.
But not forgotten. Displaced, but not forgotten.
That's beautiful. That's a really beautiful sentiment. We just had to stop talking because it was so emotional, you know. The poor Ken. Could he be dead?
No.
Well, he couldn't be. We did already say that nobody died. But they do, somebody does say, before we know what's going on with Ken Matthews was on his way to the hospital. He was unconscious, and from what they had seen, his chances didn't look good.
They really drive it home, the idea that Ken could die at any moment. He's fine, but he could also die. Yeah,
but then it seems like what's actually happened is that he has received some bruises and scratches to his face, primarily. No other part of his body seems damaged. He is very touch and go.
Mm-hmm. Can I read a quote that I wrote down in full?
Yes.
In my notes? This is something the doctor says to him once he's woken back up.
Right.
The doctor says, once the swelling from the bruises and the small cuts goes down, you're going to look exactly the same as you did before. Like, as a way of consoling him. Like, don't worry. You're gonna be exactly as you were. And it worked on me. It threw me off. I thought, oh, he's gonna be fine. I did not see the
next twist coming.
I was blindsided.
Oh.
I was blindsided.
Well, and is that a football reference? No, it's not. It's actually a blindness reference because Ken has these bandages that totally are covering his face.
I imagined like the Invisible Man.
Yeah, it was like that with like a little slit for his mouth. Mm-hmm. And immediately in the aftermath of having seen this accident, Liz, Todd, and Jess go back to Amy's party and like tell Amy what happened. Mm-hmm. Amy is distraught. She wants to go to the hospital right away because like this is her man, you know? But then Elizabeth is like, they're not going to let you see him. Or somebody says that. And then they resolve to go the next day. Yeah. So Amy goes there with Jessica the next day. And also, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Matthews are there and say like, yeah, no, he can't have visitors yet because he's still in the ICU. And Jessica notices that Amy seems sort of relieved. Mm-hmm. Like all of this is like a little bit much for her. Which is understandable. I mean, they're not actually dating.
Right.
And her whole interest in Ken is basically this daydream that she has that's not real.
What's interesting is that she never comes to the realization that she was too much and pushed him away. And, you know, poor Terry thinks she's the reason that he got in this car accident. But really, you can draw it back to Amy.
Oh, yes.
Amy's, I guess, overzealousness in trying to lock this man down forced him to leave the party, which is why he got in the car accident.
Right. And instead, like, nobody ever connects those dots. But Amy does, like, flat out confront Terry and tell her that it is her fault.
Yeah.
Because if Terry hadn't... I mean, everything that is in the accusation is not true. Like, if
it's
Terry
all
hadn't
projecting, is what we call it.
him... Yeah. Oh, that must be projecting. She doesn't know.
Yeah.
But she actually, I think, doesn't realize that Ken wanted to leave her party.
She will never realize.
No. But we didn't even... We stopped at the bandages and the Invisible Man. Like, eventually... Yeah, I guess no other kids are there. It's just Ken and his parents and the doctor. But eventually it's time for the bandages to come off, and they all come off, and it's like he looks exactly the same. Great.
But then what does he ask? He says something like, when are you going to take the bandages off my eyes?
Yeah, it's so sad. And the doctor's like, uh-oh, we were afraid of this, but there was no way to know until we took them off your eyes.
Okay, so I have not Googled this yet, but my assumption is that this would be the rarest possible outcome from a car crash. To just go blind. To be totally fine, cuts and bruises, but blind.
Yeah, I didn't Google it either. I mean, so since we're going to be talking for the rest of the book about Ken Matthews and his struggle with blindness, the book... I mean, we'll read some quotes. I think there are places where the book actually handles it fairly well. I just want to say, like, if I ever feel like we're making fun of the book, we're making fun of the book. I have actually very recently gotten a chance to talk with some people for another podcast project about people who like Ken Matthews. Not in a car accident, I don't think. I don't really know the details, but they became blind after having been sighted for the first part of their lives. They're awesome, normal people. Like, there's nothing...
This book makes a lot about blindness. Like, it makes a big to-do about it, and it is both warranted and also laying it on a little thick.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it handles it okay, but I just want to... I guess I'm just trying to hedge my bets here just in case we come across sounding in any way callous. It's just that the book is ridiculous.
Well, I, as a joke, was going to pitch you on the idea of wearing blindfolds to record this, and then, 30 pages later, poor Terry comes up with that idea herself, and I was like, oh man, this is...
I think it's actually Elizabeth. See, this is Elizabeth doing her Elizabeth thing.
Oh, right. She plants the seed of the idea.
So basically, after Ken is blind, Jessica and Elizabeth go to visit him.
What page does he become blind on? I was trying to track the structure of this story.
It's right around page 59, because I marked this down.
Pretty deep in there for the premise to take shape at page 59.
Yeah, it's like 2/3 of this book is 150 pages long. Okay, this is just before the bandages come off. I thought this was kind of funny. Ken breathed a sigh of relief as the gauze was removed and he could actually feel the air on his head again. He raised his hand to the top of his head. Whoa, he said with half a laugh. Where's my hair? We had to shave it, Dr. Arquette explained, in order to treat some of the cuts and to take some x-rays. Don't worry, it'll grow back in a few weeks. That's good, Ken grinned. I'm gonna look pretty scary on the football field, right, Dad? You always do, Mr. Matthews replied. Especially with that arm of yours.
How fast does hair grow in Sweet
I don't know,
Valley?
but I thought that was such a funny, dad comment. You always do look scary, son. You always do.
But the dad knows. That you assume the doctor has told the dad, your kid is
the
blind
parents'
as a bat.
reaction suggests to me that they already knew.
So he's overcompensating
that it was a possibility.
with a joke. Like with a dad joke. Okay.
So not long after that, Jessica and Elizabeth come by. And Ken momentarily thinks about, pretending that he can see still. He doesn't want to deal with it. And they've brought him a card that has, everybody in the school basically signed it. And they're like, read the poem. And he's like, I'm blind. he just blurts it out.
But I do love that we get a little bit of his thought process. He considers saying, I have a headache, can you read it for me? But then he does the right thing. He's honest.
Yeah, although when he had that, I was like, that's a good idea, Ken. That would work. That would totally work.
You can milk this for a while.
Yeah, but it is, at a certain point. So they go back to the school, and I think Jessica intercepts Amy at the hospital and mentions it to her, and Amy leaves. She's like, fuck this.
Yeah, for someone who is that into him, she bails just as quickly as this romance
and
began.
She has come to visit him at the hospital at some point and sent some letters, and Ken is touched by that early on. But then he gets sent to this rehab facility for a month. A month that gets totally elided in this book. It's you turn a page to a new chapter, and it's a
lot happens very quickly in this poor boy's life.
Yeah.
It's just a few weeks. At the end of the book, they talk about, oh, remember just a few weeks ago? Like, oh, wow. I didn't realize all this could happen in such a short span of time. He went to a school for the blind and learned how to, live his life as a blind person. He did get screwed a little bit. He did not get a dog. I feel like a seeing eye dog would have done wonders for poor Ken.
Yeah, he could have had a buddy. But yeah, no, chapter 9 starts after, like, the last thing that happened was that Terry went to visit Ken at the hospital, and he was happy to see her, and she cries at him because she feels so guilty. Amy has, like, full-on confronted her, like, blaming her for the accident, as we mentioned earlier. Right. Now, so she's all sad. She goes to the hospital, and did that happen already? That Amy confronted her, or was that? Yeah, it did. So at the beginning of chapter 9. Ron Jablonski.
Yes, which is a fantastic name.
Yeah. When I'm naming characters, I tend to give them last names like Jablonski.
A lot of Polish people in here and stuff.
Yeah. Everybody that, when I was growing up, those were the kind of last names people had where I lived.
They roll off the tongue in a very nice way.
Yeah. Attitude is everything, Ron Jablonski told Ken. If I keep saying that over and over again, it's because I want to drill it into your head. Ken nodded. He didn't know what Ron looked like, but he sure had learned to recognize his voice. Ron had been his counselor, therapist, and friend during the month Ken had spent at Hollyfield. So it's like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. He's been there for a month already now. Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. I understand what I was confused before. So Terry doesn't come to visit Ken at the hospital. Amy accosts Terry. Terry wants to go visit Ken, and Elizabeth is like, you can't visit him because he's at this rehab facility for people who've become blind.
And no one can visit him.
Not allowed. No visitors.
But then, Terry's the one that asks.
Yeah.
She says, hey, do you mind working your Sweet Valley magic?
Yeah, she basically is like, can't you talk to his parents and tell them how important it is? Because she wants to apologize to Ken for what she now feels is her fault. Mm-hmm. So she goes there. This blindness,
by the way, shook me. It really did catch me by surprise. I did not think that that's where this story was going, and then it just went full into it. Uh-huh. This was a premise about what if the star football player became blind.
Yeah.
It took the book this long to figure out what it was about, and now we're into an interesting premise.
Well, this is kind of a funny side effect of having you read the ebook, because on the physical copy, on the back of the book, the second paragraph starts, then one rainy night, Ken is in a terrible car accident that leaves him blind.
Yep, no, didn't read that. Didn't read that. This was truly a roller coaster.
Aw. Well, roller coaster for Ken, too, because he is...
Oh, poor Ken.
When it's about time for him to leave now, his month is up, and he goes into his room to kind of like pack things up, and he's got all these cards from students at Sweet Valley. Ron had read each one to Ken as it arrived, and he had reread them whenever Ken felt lonely. His favorite card was the homemade one from the football team. It was shaped like a football, and a shoelace was threaded through it. Ken ran his hand over all his friends' signatures. He could feel the impressions the pens had made in the paper. Remembering the guys on the team made tears come to Ken's eyes. It was funny. His eyes couldn't see anymore, but they sure were good at crying. In his whole life, Ken hadn't cried as much as he had in the last month. There were all kinds of cards from lots of different people. Mr. Collins, you remember him?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Coach Schultz, Olivia Davidson, the Wakefields, Carol Walker. Amy had written too, but both of the letters had come a long time ago, in the first week. Ken knew them by the scented envelopes that were Amy's trademark. Her letters had been friendly, but there wasn't much to them beyond the same old, "You'll be fine," that most people wrote. With a wave of his hand, Ken sent the cards flying to the door. Not one of these get-well wishes had brought him any closer to seeing again. So he's about to go back to Sweet Valley High, and he feels bad about it, understandably. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then we get his first day at Sweet Valley High.
But they mentioned later that he had gotten like a private walkthrough to learn the layout of the school.
Because he's doing a lot of like step counting to like figure out his way around. And he has a cane.
Which makes sense. I had never thought about that. But it's clear that whoever wrote this book did the very minimum amount of research into what happens when you go blind. Like, what are the things that they teach you immediately? It's like, count your steps. That's where we're going to start.
Yeah. Hi, Marissa chiming in real quick. After listening back to this episode, I thought maybe it would be a good idea for me to actually look into this whole step counting thing. And lo and behold, I quickly uncovered many articles written by people who are blind referring to the idea that they count their steps as a popular misconception, and that this is not really a recommended method for getting around because it's not particularly reliable. It's possible that this is something that has just changed in the course of the last 30 years in terms of the way that people are taught, but that's just me giving the ghostwriter the benefit of the doubt. I'll put some links in the show notes to what I uncovered. It seems to me like if there was a popular misconception, it might have been really easy for an author to just trade in that rather than doing the research. Anyway, I thought it was worth popping in to comment on after the fact rather than just deleting that whole part. Now back to the show. And just to call myself out here, like, if I had really been thinking about this, I probably could have tried to ask one of the people that I have met that is blind and to be the guest on this book, but then you would have been deprived of reading this beautiful...
I'll close my eyes if that helps.
Okay, well, soon, that's what Terry's going to do. Because, so Ken, I mean, just to, I guess, like, fast forward through it, Ken is having a really tough time in all of his classes, understandably. Winston, on the first day, is leading him around. And has to, like, meet him, like, they have to arrange to, like, meet each other between every class so that Winston can lead him to the next class.
And I love the acknowledgement that he wasn't a great student to begin with, and now things are going to be way harder.
Yeah. It's like he's recording his lectures, but then the teacher will say something like, open your books. And he's just like, damn it.
Yeah.
You know, he's still learning to read Braille. I passed a Braille Institute on the way over here, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. Well, on the way to the first location. And then Amy, like, used to sit by him in one of these classes, and now she doesn't.
He's like a leper. They're treating him like a leper.
But then Terry goes to talk to him, and they actually have, like, a great conversation. It's really nice. Yeah. I think that might be when he goes out by the football field on his own. He goes rogue.
Right.
Winston's supposed to meet him.
Right.
And that's when he overhears Scott Trost talking to some other football player. And he learns a couple things.
That Scott is the new quarterback of the team.
Yes.
What else does he learn? Oh, that Amy and he are dating, right?
Yeah, but Amy is, like, going after him hard.
She's pursuing him hard. She has dropped Ken like a hot potato.
Yeah, here's what it says. So were you going with her? That's such an old-timey way to say it. But,
going with?
Yeah. Ken heard a distant voice say, a couple of guys seemed to be heading back to school from the athletic fields. She's been after me to take her out, that's for sure, ever since Coach made me quarterback. Oh my God, Amy's so transparent. From his position on the bench, Ken tried to figure out who he was listening to. It sounded like Scott Trost, but whom was he talking about?
I wonder if I'd be able to identify my friends just by their voice. I feel like I do a decent job.
Yeah.
I think I was silently judging him. I'm like, you don't know who these people are.
Yeah, well, do they ever even say? No, but this is the cool example of when we're in Ken's POV after he becomes blind, this is how it is. It's like, if he doesn't know who's talking, we don't know who's talking either, you know, and it sort of comes up as it becomes clear to Ken. You know Amy, she's got to have somebody to go out with, another boy said. Ken was certain that the second guy was Skip Harmon. There you go. Ken's breath caught in his chest. Could they mean Amy Sutton?
The only Amy that's ever been referenced?
Yeah, right.
Of course it's Amy Sutton.
Yeah. So he feels like crap. But then Terry comes out and they start talking and he forgets, you know, the pain of his blindness for a little while.
When she starts basically nursing him back to health, it's very like, what do they call it? Nightingale syndrome? Isn't that a thing?
Where you fall in love with your nurse?
Yeah.
Like Florence Nightingale?
Yeah, I think that's a thing.
I mean, there's Stockholm Syndrome, but that's when you fall in love with your kidnapper, so that's not what's happening.
No, I think there's a Nightingale reference I'm remembering from something or some movie. And I caught that very early on. I'm like, this is not going to go well. I see where this conflict is going.
What happens is that Terry, like the first thing is that Terry talks to him, but at some point in the conversation, he has this moment where he's like, oh no, she is just talking to me out of pity. Like, I like this girl. I'd like to spend more time with her. But you know what? She wouldn't want to spend time with me. And he gets all sullen and runs away. And Terry takes this kind of personally, and so she calls Elizabeth. And that's when Elizabeth advises her to, I read this weird thing in a magazine. This is kind of strange to try, but Terry has said, I wish I could understand what was going on inside of him. And Elizabeth recommends that Terry cover her eyes for a little while, like try to spend some time, like blind.
Yeah.
So this on the face of it seems a little silly, but the way that it's actually written about, I thought was pretty, like, surprisingly nuanced for Sweet Valley High.
Just as a side note, in a Boy Meets World episode, I feel like this would lead to the character showing up to school, with their eyes taped shut and sunglasses on and a walking stick, trying to live the life of a blind person for a day to see how it is. And it would not go well there either, but would be way funnier.
Yeah. This is not played for comedy. So Terry's walking around her house with a scarf over her eyes. I guess it must be a pretty thick scarf, because otherwise that wouldn't do too much. Although your eyes are closed underneath the scarf.
Right. The scarf is there to keep you honest.
Yeah. So she's understanding that this is kind of scary, like to not really know where you're going. So she's relating to Ken on that level. The reality of blindness was turning out to be a lot harsher than Terry had ever imagined. It's kind of a strange choice of words, the reality. It's like, that's not what this is, but okay, whatever. Every simple task she tried gave her a whole new sense of respect for how much Ken had already learned. He was really doing well at this. At school, he walked at a normal pace by himself. That alone was a major achievement. When she finally managed to get some juice into a glass, Terry found a chair next to the window and sank into it. A sweet, fragrant breeze blew in the kitchen. Terry took a sip of the juice, then stood up and walked over to the sliding glass door that opened onto the deck. The smooth glass felt cool to her fingertips, but standing at the window made her sad. Ken would never be able to look out a window again. Blindness had robbed him of even the simplest pleasures. Suddenly, a bird started chirping. The sound was startling. It stood out like a bright color against the darkness in her head. Standing at the window, she listened intently, drinking in the music. She must have heard those birds in the backyard every day of her life, but she had never really listened to them before, never realized how beautiful they sounded. Being blind was terrible, but it did have its compensations, Terry suddenly realized. She was hearing and touching things she had merely taken for granted before. Still, when she took off the blindfold a few minutes later, Terry was immensely relieved to have her eyesight back. Then a feeling of sadness overwhelmed her. She had only been blind for an hour. Ken might be blind for the rest of his life. Oh, which I guess we should say, the doctor has allowed some wiggle room that Ken might get his eyesight back.
But don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah, and Ken is like, okay, I better not get my hopes up.
Another instance in that passage of Sweet Valley Kid drinking juice as their beverage of choice.
I love that orange juice.
Yeah, did not clean up the spilled juice.
No, we never saw that. And you know what? Terry takes this experience and turns it into like what feels like a very deep understanding of
blindness.
Yeah. Because suddenly now when she offers to hang out with Ken and like she wants to take him to the beach and she like kind of knows exactly what to say to him.
She narrates what's
she's
happening.
Driving.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but that was clever.
Yeah, it's like she's driving and she's like, I'm not going on this street. Now I'm stopping at the stoplight. Then I'm going to turn on this street. Because she felt like not knowing what was happening was part of what made it scary.
Yeah.
And
I get that.
They get to the beach and he's sort of sad, like, oh, I used to come running on the beach. And she's like, you can run, Like, I'll be right here. Like,
it's a private cove, basically. Yeah. It's not the Sweet Valley Beach. It's North Haven, which is just vacant. It's just a 2-mile stretch
one of those
of
vacant beaches that between like Newport and Santa Barbara, of which there are so many.
One of those.
There are parts of the beach that are quieter than others, for sure.
Sure.
They spend a few days, like she invites him to a football game, and he's a little bit iffy on it, but he goes and has a good time, right?
It becomes a romance plot, but neither of them is acknowledging the romantic part of it.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised when it came back to Ken at a certain point is like he's going to kiss her.
Right.
And then he's like, oh no, there was nothing romantic between us. Like she would hate that. And I was just like, oh, okay. I thought that they were like, had become an item, but I guess not.
Yeah, for someone who's the star quarterback of the football team, his confidence is quite low, and I appreciate that perspective. He's not super cocky. He's not overconfident and just, assuming that everybody loves him. He's like, no, she must just be taking care of me, and I'm thinking too much about it.
Yeah. And then once that realization comes, he has a whole new weird attitude towards Terry, which the book is winding down at this point, but he's like...
Winding down and building towards what we hope is them getting together officially.
This is like the part of the romance novel where the two characters are convinced that the other one is all wrong for them and like it can never work out. So it's like the last hurdle. They've fallen in love, but like they can't confess their love to each other for reasons inside their own mind.
Yeah.
So Ken is like simultaneously reliant on Terry for every little thing, to the point that he is not doing things on his own as much as he should be. And also he's kind of like being a dick to her, because it's like if he's friendly to her, it'll only be making him feel his love for her more.
He's keeping it very professional. He's treating her like an employee. I feel like there's a distance that he's forcing by his behavior.
Yeah.
I felt like for a book and a series that seems very broad and soapy, this was accurate, I think, to a certain extent, and nuanced in the way that people behave.
Well, there was one part, so when Terry eventually calls Elizabeth again, and for at least the third time in this book, Elizabeth to the rescue, like, help advise me, she calls and she kind of tells Liz that he's kind of been a jerk lately, and Liz is like, have you ever told him how you felt? Because, like, everybody else knows that Terry has a crush on Ken and has, like, all year. Elizabeth says, Terry, when you see him today, why don't you tell Ken how you feel about him? Elizabeth suggested. That might make things easier between you. You'll know one way or the other if he's interested in you, as a girlfriend. Terry let out a little laugh. I'll try, but I don't think I want to know the answer. And that was just like, it was such a gut punch, because I have been Terry like so many times in high school and beyond, this thing of like, well, I get to spend all this time with this person that I have strong feelings for.
Right.
Like, maybe it'll just like work itself out. But what's happening with Terry, I don't know if this ever happened in one of the situations for me, but, is that Ken actually does have feelings for her, but he has his own reasons for not voicing
They're
them.
both doing the same thing.
Yeah.
To the situation.
So there's a big fight that they have the next time they see each other.
At the Droids concert? Is this
No,
one?
they do go to the Droids concert, but that's where Terry is kind of like, he's been kind of a dick lately.
Are the Droids a recurring
Yes.
band? Okay.
Usually referred to as Sweet Valley High's own rock band.
They're great. That's a great name.
It is a good name, yeah.
I assume that they're a great band, and I would enjoy
I think so
seeing
too.
them.
Yeah, I wish they were real.
Is it? Do you think it's a Star Wars-y thing? Like, we're in the 80s, there's a band, it's like, like the Droids.
I hope so.
Okay.
I think it's gotta be.
I like that.
Do you have your book handy?
I do.
Do you want to do a dramatic reading of this fight with me?
Yeah.
Is that too intense?
No, not at all. Let me bring it up.
This will be our first time probably acting together since grad school.
Really? Did we not do one of these on my previous episode?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I haven't listened to it in a while. When I introduced you, I said your full name, but I didn't say a single thing about you.
No, I like the mystery of it.
But what Gladiators may or may not know is that Will is a director, a film director, and also other things, and writer. And so, you can tell me about my performance. I could take it.
Oh, no. This would be great.
Ken, spending time with you was my idea, you know that. But I can't go on like this forever. I've got my own homework to take care of, too.
I'm sure you do.
Ken, I'm not saying I don't want to see you anymore.
Aren't you? It was fun to play Candy Striper for a while, but now you're sick of it. I understand perfectly.
That's not true. I only want to help you, Ken.
Look, Terry, you're not blind. You can't help me because you have no idea what it's like. So why don't you just get out of here like everyone else?
Terry stood up, ready to run out, but she couldn't let him have the last word. She had to tell him how she felt about him. You're right. I don't know what it's like to be blind, but I do know it's not the end of the world, Ken. Plenty of blind people have accomplished great things, and you can too if you stop sitting back and feeling sorry for yourself, letting other people do everything for you.
I said get out of here.
Terry stormed through the open doorway, then spun around to face him, tears streaming down her face. All right. I see now that you've been taking advantage of me this whole time. Oh, you like it when I help you out and do things for you. It's fine with you that I make you feel good about yourself. But did you ever stop once to consider how I feel? Why in the world did you think I was doing all these things for you anyway? Because I love you, that's why. And if you never noticed that, you're even blinder than you think.
All right, we'll go for another take.
I know, right? We should have your wife come out and give it. She's literally currently teaching an acting class. So
This is true.
But yeah, it's really dramatic, and it's just like Ken runs. The chapter closes.
Where are they when this happens?
At Ken's house.
Okay.
So Terry turned and ran down the front sidewalk to her car. She heard Ken calling her name, but she didn't stop. So Ken's like calling after her. You know, it's been a big revelation, and he's just like, oh my gosh, you know. So what does Ken do?
He yells, Terry, Terry. I mean, that's the beginning of the next chapter.
Yeah, it's a direct pickup.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he calls her house.
Yes.
After he sits on the porch and mopes for 15 minutes.
It goes into, I think, what we can admit is a classic rom-com ending, you know, where he resolves his inner flaw and does a big romantic gesture, something that's very difficult for him, which in this case is doing things without her. So he figures out a way to, he first realizes she's not home. I know where she is. She must be at the beach. So he rejects everyone's offers to give him a ride to the beach and says he's going to do it on his own. He storms out of his house, gets to the bus stop, gets on the bus.
Sweet Valley has buses.
Oh, right. Buses that no one would ever take. There's no reason to ever take the bus. So the bus driver is really nice. He gets to the beach. He gets off. He counts his steps. He
He knows that's where she is. And he knows the beach really well because
Right.
he spent so much time with her there.
But it feels like this epic, long,
it seems like it must have been really hard.
Yes.
He has to ask people, strangers, for advice. Is this the bus stop? And bus driver, can you tell me? Things that, we've probably seen, living in the city, you see people that are navigating the world like this who are blind all the time, It happened in Chicago recently. There was a guy getting off the metro rail who myself and several other people were kind of telling him where the stairs were and helping him go the right way. And I just remember thinking, this must be his whole day.
Yeah.
Because this is clearly a guy who's brave enough to risk, walking down a train platform and not knowing where the stairs are. I don't know what his story was,
Right.
but I was just thinking wow, that must be on the one hand, I don't want to he's out there living his life. So
Right.
I don't want to treat him with pity. But on the other hand, ooh, that would be so hard to have to navigate the world that way, especially in a new situation, right? With nobody to lead you around.
But I could hear the music, it felt like the end of a movie, and they run into each other's arms, and at the setting, they're back at the beach, which is the place that began their relationship. Yeah, it was very nice. The one thing I will say is that I wish that he didn't get his sight back.
Well, yeah. And so what happens is that there's a big romantic moment at the end, and it goes like this. Suddenly, his lips met hers in a warm, passionate kiss. Standing on the beach, the wind tousling their hair and the waves crashing around them, their kiss said more than all the words in the world could ever say. This is very Princess Bride. For the first time, Terry didn't have any doubts about the way Ken was feeling. Terry, you're too good for me, he whispered in her ear when the kiss was over. We're good together, Ken, she replied, resting her head on his chest. You're right, and we're going to be even better, he said, squeezing her waist. Ken, she said excitedly, the sunset is so beautiful. I wish you could see it. The sky is light pink and the sun is gold like it's on fire. Ken removed his sunglasses and turned his face toward the ocean. Are there clouds? He asked. Only a few, she answered. The sun's over this way, right? He asked, pointing. Yes, Terry answered, her voice quivering. How did you know that? Because I can feel its warmth, Ken answered. But you know what, Terry? When I look that way, there's a brightness, a definite brightness. And then a second later, he's like, I don't see it anymore. And she's like, Ken, the sun went down. And so it's your vision is coming back, So that's basically the end of the book. He doesn't get his vision back, but it's he's going to get his vision back. Which, when the doctor said he might get his vision back, I was like, okay, so they're going to have Ken be blind for a book or two. And then that's what happens in these books. People are differently abled for a couple books and then
they get a taste of
fixed.
it. Yeah. It's almost like he's been rewarded, in the same way that he was punished unfairly, he is also rewarded unfairly. So there's a balance to this universe for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
And then we don't really know in the epilogue, the final chapter, if he's still blind or not, do we?
No, he's like not even in that chapter.
They're running. It's all about Patty Gilbert and Dee Dee Gordon, and it's about setting up the next book, I assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe he can see again, or maybe they've established that the two of them run when he can't see. So,
yeah.
You know.
Well, I guess find out next season on Sweet Valley Diaries.
I guess.
Would you care to tease the next book, which will be the premiere of season 7 of Sweet Valley Diaries?
Sure. It sounds like there's something malicious going on. It seemed a little dark.
Patty Gilbert, Gladiators, if you don't remember her, she is a friend of Dee Dee Gordon's, and in some of the Dee Dee books, or like Bill and Dee Dee books, she factors in, but this is definitely going to be her first time in the spotlight.
But her boyfriend is off at college.
Yeah, his name is Jim.
Jim is coming back this weekend, and they haven't seen each other in a while, and she's really nervous. Patty's really nervous. She wants it all to be perfect when her boyfriend comes back.
She seems to think that maybe he's like cheating on her in college.
And Dee Dee seems... I read this as Dee Dee's the one he's cheating with.
Oh, that would be quite a scandal.
Dee Dee seems to know way too much. And she's withholding. She's like,
I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about Jim. I'm sure he's off doing wonderful things for you. And like planning a great
and it sounds like total garbage.
Yeah.
Dee Dee, I see straight through you.
Well, do you have the part about coming next month as well?
Yes.
Would you read the whole thing? And the Gladiators are going to be pretty excited.
Sure. Okay. Will everything work out between Patty and Jim? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 61, Boy Trouble. And then there's another one coming next month, the first Sweet Valley High Superstar Edition, Lila's story. As if that's what we wanted. Lila, who's been a terror in this book. It's like, you know what I want? A whole spinoff, Superstar Lila.
Yeah, we didn't even tell them about the scene with the cake and all the people.
The world's largest cake.
There's this moment with the cake where they like are having a welcome back to school party that Elizabeth and Enid have like arranged for Ken, and there's this a huge rectangular box containing a sheet cake that read, "Welcome home, Ken." Poor Ken, Jessica said with a shake of her head. He won't even be able to read the cake. Jessica, Elizabeth replied impatiently, Ken doesn't need people feeling sorry for him. The cake will taste just as good even if he can't read it. Besides, it's really to show him that we're happy he's back. And then Jessica says, Liz, are you really happy he's back? She's just like, it's so sad. Like it's and Elizabeth is pissed off at Jessica, but she's like, at least she's being honest about how she feels as opposed to like Amy, who never apologizes to Ken or says anything about Scott Trost to Ken. Mm-hmm. But there's this other moment that I thought was hilarious, also around the cake, just the next page. I think this whole cake idea is stupid, Lila Fowler complained when they found her at the locker, adjusting a tortoiseshell barrette in her long, light brown hair. I mean, how's he even gonna know there's a cake for him? We're all going to yell surprise, and then we'll tell him. That's how, Enid answered.
I love that.
Lila gave a bored shrug. All right, she said. I'll be there, even though he won't know if I am or not.
This was my favorite part of the whole book. I can't believe that I didn't bring it up, because that scene was everything to me.
Well, the next sentence says, Enid looked as though she was about to punch Lila,
yes.
So Elizabeth took her friend by the hand and gently guided her down the hall. And then when they had the cake scene, that's when everybody's like, hey, it's me, Erin Dallas. And Winston says, like, hey, Amy, aren't you going to say something? So, you know.
The cake scene was really special. that was, I think, intentionally funny. And we were rallying around Lila being awful. Yeah. You know, like I think we were allowed to laugh at the idea that a cake is to be read. You know, a cake is not to be read. It is to be eaten. But then the idea of, will he even know there's a cake here? Like, we could tell him there's a pony. Like, we could tell him there, you know. Yeah. Who was a popular football player at the time that he would look up to? O.J. Simpson. We got O.J. Simpson to come here and, you know, participate in your cake ceremony. Like, O.J., say something. Oh, he's shy. Feel like talking. He's eating cake right now. Oh, my gosh, that's awful. But that does seem like where Lila's head is at. Yeah. Well, tell me this, Will. Having read this book, is there a character that you relate to in particular? I feel like I shouldn't say Skip, but... Or maybe Ron Jablonski? Ron Jablonski gets totally shafted because we never know what he looks like. I know! We never revisit. Old he is, I pictured that Ron Jablonski is just the generic name that all the workers at this facility get because it's everyone deserves a Ron Jablonski to help their rehab process, but there's just not enough Ron Jablonskis.
That's true. There is a moment toward the very end of the book, like in the last chapter. Did you hear that Ken's sight is starting to come back? Patty asked absently. I didn't say that very absently, but did you hear that Ken's sight is starting to come back? She asked absently. Yes, isn't that great? Dee Dee answered. Someone should make a movie out of his story. Maybe they could even film it at Sweet Valley High. We could all be extras. Wouldn't that be terrific? So I think that in next week's Extra Drama episode, you and I should think about this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not the only time that like a movie is referenced, because early on with Skip, he looks at himself in the mirror as if he's looking into a movie camera. So there is this idea that these kids are kind of self-absorbed and picture their lives as if they're interesting enough to be in movies.
Yeah. True.
But their proximity to Los Angeles can explain away all of that.
It's true. It's true. And I mean, high school's kind of like that, right? Like you just think of yourself through that lens. I certainly did.
I don't know if I did, but looking back, no, I don't know if anything that exciting happened that I thought it should be in a movie.
I guess not. Well, we can save all this for the bonus episode. In the meantime, Gladiators, thank you so much for listening. I'm so excited about next season, but we can get into all of that in the next episode. Thank you for listening and for telling your friends. And remember that you can email me at sweetvalleydiaries@me.com or find me on Instagram at Sweet Valley Diaries. The website is sweetvalleydiaries.net. Do you have anything you want to plug, Will?
No. Well, I mean, we have a movie that is theoretically coming out in the next calendar year. If it happens to come to a film festival near you, keep an eye out. It's called The Mirror Game, and we're pretty excited about it.
Called The Mirror Game. Yeah. So surprise twist ending, Gladiators. Well, Taya was on the podcast earlier this season. Taya.
I don't know if did we have a title for the movie at that point?
We didn't.
Keep an eye out. Marissa wrote it. I directed it. Taya's in it. You better love it. I mean, you better believe that I'm going to tell you more about it when it is coming to theaters near you. Yeah. Should that happen, or if it's on streaming at some point, which should also happen. All right. We'll see you next time. And I have some advice that I actually wrote down in advance this time. The cake tastes just as good, even if you can't read it. That's great. You could have a bumper sticker that says, honk if you love reading cakes.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So does that mean meet Miss America?
We are recording.
Oh, man. Okay.
The pressure. There's no pressure. Okay. Welcome to Sweet Valley Diaries, the podcast where it's just like... Oh, wait, no, that's not what I was going to say. Sorry. Sometimes I say the podcast and sometimes I don't. This time I don't want to say it. Oh, this will go at the end. Gotta have at least one flub to put at the end.
Yeah.